Hello friends, so I made a Miss All Sunday / Nico Robin cosplay from One Piece, and I wanted to share how I made her. So it all started with a box of fabric from BigZ fabric. I did a full unboxing video already, but I wanted to show these beautiful fabrics again super quick. First up, we have this Calico Python Snake Vinyl in Caribbean Turquoise. It's absolutely beautiful and very close to what was used in the live action costume for her belt. Next is my fave from this entire box, which is this disco purple metallic Cayman Gator vinyl. That's a lot. That's a lot for my little brain. I absolutely love this fabric. It's sewed very nicely. Make sure you use a leather sewing needle when you are sewing this fabric, but it sews so nicely and it's so pretty. I love the details. Oh, it's so good. For her skirt and her bodice, I got this solid butter velvet drapery upholstery fabric in wisteria. The color is perfect and it is so soft. Y'all know I love working with suede, and it has the perfect texture for her coat, so I got some microfiber suede upholstery fabric in white. Next, I got this solid crepe back satin fabric in lavender. It has a really nice weight. It worked perfectly for the lining of the bodice, skirt, and the coat. Alright, now we can go ahead and assemble the costume. First is the coat. So y'all have seen me use this pattern before. It's a modified Yaya Han coat pattern. Modified as in I cut off the lapel and I got rid of the slit in the back. I used this coat pattern for Buggy and quite a few other costumes as well. It is definitely my favorite coat pattern. It makes a very nice coat. So I plopped all of the patterns onto the lining. I like to use the lining fabric as a mock-up, even though I'm confident this jacket pattern will still fit me and work for this, and it did. But doing a mock-up just gets me familiar with the pattern again before I use the shell fabric, which is obviously more expensive, and my final fabric. I pin all of the seams together and then I sew them. Before I actually machine sew my sleeves in, I like to do a basting stitch first, which is just a temporary stitch, and then I go and I sew it with my machine. So her live action coat has beautiful flowers on the lining, which are probably printed on, but I don't have the tools to do that. So I used my trusty Cricut to cut out a bunch of different sized flowers. I'm using this really pretty light pink heat transfer vinyl. I pin them all onto the coat first to make sure that the placements look good. Somebody please call Vogue because this fit is absolutely amazing. Anyway, so then I started ironing them all on. Let's pretend I'm using a pressing cloth. Honestly, this is how I've always done my heat transfer vinyl. Yell at me if you want, but I've never had a problem with it. So the vinyl worked perfectly on the satin. No notes, 10 out of 10. It was perfect. Then I also cut out these little circles in this darker pink for like the middle part of the flower, and they turned out really cute. So now for the outer shell of the coat, I'm gonna do everything that I just did, but I won't sew the sleeves in just yet because I have some secret magic I'll be doing first. We got some details we got to put on here. Robin has some really fun designs on her coat, so I made the designs in paint.net and then I transferred them to Cricut Design Space and I cut them out of cardstock. I now have a pattern for some applique. I'm using a gold fabric for the applique, which is not BigZ. It was in my fabric stash. I don't know where it came from. I've had it for a very long time. And I'm tracing the design onto this tearaway embroidery fabric interfacing. And then I pressed it onto the gold fabric, I cut out the fabric, and now I have a piece that I will be embroidering onto the jacket. But first, I want to make sure that the piece doesn't slip around when I sew it, so I use this double-sided adhesive sheet to keep it in place. You can also use quilting spray adhesive, but this is just what I had, and it worked. Next is the tedious part. I will sit here and zigzag stitch around the entire piece. I did a lot of practicing first off camera to get the perfect stitch length, tension, thread colors, technique, etc. I recommend doing that first on a spare piece of your final fabric. And this just gets you comfortable with doing the final details. After a bit of patience and a lot of shows to pass the time, it's done. I do have an embroidery machine, but honestly, I have no idea how to do applique with it. So this actually worked perfectly. You don't need an embroidery machine to do this. You can use a regular sewing machine. If you're really brave and have hours upon hours of movies and shows to watch, you can do it by hand, which was my original plan. But then I was like, nah, I'm just gonna zigzag stitch it. And you know what? It worked perfectly. It's fine. So now I can assemble the sleeves. But Don't put them in the jacket yet. Don't even think about it. No, because we have to sew on all of the moons. I call them moons. I don't know what they are. Anyway, she has 10 of them. So I'm just gonna do that. I'm doing the exact same thing that I did on the sleeves. Now they're just moves. Now they're all moons and they're all curved, so there's no straight lines. And this just, it took so long, but it was very worth it. And I'm also on a giant piece of fabric because I didn't think to do this on the separate panels of the jacket. No, I, for some reason, was like, I'm gonna do this with the whole coat assembled. I have no idea why. Why did I do that? I don't know, but it was worth it. I like how it turned out. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. Don't even tell me. Don't even leave a comment about it. I don't want to know. I already wasted the time to do it. Anyway, it turned out cute. It's fine. Now that it's done, I can make the rivets. I couldn't find rivets big enough for what I had in mind, so I made my own. I used UV resin, some wire, and cabochon molds to make this. They're reusable too, so if I ever want to take this jacket apart and, I don't know, make a different costume with the rivets, I can throw them in another costume. I spray painted them gold and I arranged them onto the jacket, marked where they're gonna go, poked the wire through the hole, and then I added a dab of hot glue in the back, and they're easy enough to tear off if I want to reuse them. But I don't think so because I really like how this costume turned out. I want to keep it forever and ever and ever. Now I can finally finish assembling the jacket. So I sewed the shoulder seams. There's so many S's. I sewed the shoulder seams together and I installed the sleeves. I can also install the lining now that all of the inside work is done. I am flat lining this jacket instead of bag lining it because I don't need to make the seams pretty, since I will be finishing the edges with faux fur. I can hide all of my mistakes with some faux fur. Speaking of faux fur, I gotta plug BigZ again because they're amazing. They have the absolute best selection of fur that I've ever seen. I've made some fur suits before and they're actually all made with BigZ fur. They have swatch cards and they have so many different colors and different piles and just different textures. You can get some tinsel in your fur if you wanted to. So I did have some leftover white fur from Kaya's fursuit that I used for Robin's trim. Before I cut out any of my fur, I always mark the fur direction. This is very important to do that because I have accidentally not paid attention to that before when I was first starting out using fur. So once I know the direction, I start measuring and I cut out the strips for her coat. Since it's fur and fur always hides the seams very well unless you shave it down, the strips all don't have to be in just one piece. I said the thing. You can sew the strips together and it is seamless. It's a perfect way to use up scraps. And that's what this was. It was a big piece of scrap that I had that I was like, oh, I'm gonna use this for something. So when I cut the fur, I always use a blade. I don't use scissors because this will butcher the fur on the other side and cause it to be scraggly. So just cutting the backing avoids accidentally cutting some of the fur. Apparently I got very carried away and I forgot to film any tidbits of me sewing the lining on, except for this small part. But I mean, this wasn't anything super crazy. I kind of just hand sewed the fur on. So anyway, this is going to hide the seam that I made when I sewed the lining to the coat, and no one's gonna know it's there because it's hidden by fur. I guess except for like you and me, you know, like we know it's there, but it's fine. You're not gonna tell anyone, right? For the bodice, I have this pattern that I got a while ago from Lenith. I hope I'm saying that correctly. On Etsy. This is the Colette pattern and I have made plenty of corsets with it. I love this pattern so much. It is also very similar to the pattern of her top in the live action, so it actually worked perfectly. First, I made a mock-up, which is actually going to be an inner structural piece that will be sewn in between the middle of the shell and the lining. So once the mock-up was good and it fit and everything, I pinned and cut out my pattern pieces. I paid attention to the grain of the fabric since velvet does have an up and down direction. Make sure you pay attention to stuff like that, because sometimes I don't. Once it's all cut out, I pin it together and I sew it. This pattern does have a bit of a princess seam, which some people really struggle with, and I really did in the beginning. And honestly, my best advice with princess seams is just to go slow. You can base stitch first, but just take it really slow. After all of the side seams are sewn together, I sew on the straps. Now I can do the same thing again, but with the lining. Once everything is sewn, I use my cute little mini iron to press on all the seams. This iron is so perfect for stuff like this. My big clunky iron would just accidentally press things that I didn't want to be pressed, so I love to use my little mini iron. Now I can sew the shell of the bodice to that structural layer, which is canvas, by the way. I don't think I said that. So after I sew in the shell to the structural layer, I can sew the lining in. This will have raw edges around the corset, but that is fine because I will be binding it later. Also, I use spiral steel boning and flat steel boning in this corset. I finished the edges of my boning strips in a very elegant fashion with some hot pink duct tape. I'm going to make my own bias tape with this pattern from a mystery pattern. Who knows? It's on the pattern, but I don't feel like going downstairs to the craft room to look at it. Making bias tape is actually very easy. Once you cut out the pattern, make sure you pin the pattern onto the bias of the fabric. You'll sew it together, press it, mark out where to cut it, and then cut out and pin it to your project. So I do that. I sew it with my machine and then I hand sew it on the inside to finish it. Also, when you are sewing a bodice or something that has boning in it, like steel boning, I recommend walking your machine around where you think the boning might be. I have broken a needle or two by accidentally sewing over the boning. Oops. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just going very slow, making sure I don't hit any of the boning or anything. Once I sew on one side of the bias tape, I flip it over, I flip the raw edge under, and then I hand stitch it down, if any of that makes sense. But I mean, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Next, I punch holes for the eyelets, and then I install them. She also has these really fun rivets on the bodice. So I use my seam ripper to open up some holes. I don't know why I do it this way. It's what I do, what my brain says to do. And then I install the rivets, which are screw-on rivets. I also make a modesty panel, which is hand sewn into the lining on one side. For the skirt, I sew a rectangle and then I taper it to my waist. There's no special technique or anything here. It's just trial and error. It's a weird rectangle. Also, I put in a zipper since this fabric is not stretchy. Also, as you can see, the back of my skirt is a tad bit longer than the front. Sometimes we have to modify things to make it fit us, and my butt is large, so I have to make the back longer because if I'm wearing it, it will like trapezoid out. And then I'll end up looking like Flats, the flounder from SpongeBob. So when I make skirts like this, I will make the back longer because when I wear the skirt, my butt evens it out. So the skirt is all one length. And it's, yeah. So anyway, when I put it on with a longer back, it evens out the bottom of the skirt and it looks so much better. It makes sense. I hand sewed this leather trim at the bottom and then the skirt was done. I left the top unfinished because I'm lazy and there is a belt that covers it, so it's whatever. Speaking of belt, I cut out that beautiful turquoise fabric. I think it was like a 3-inch thick belt, I think. I used that gold fabric again for the trim around the top and the bottom of the belt. I wrapped it over some rope for a little bit of thickness, and then I sewed the gold tubes to the belt, and then I also added this pretty gold trim just for an extra pop of fun. Y'all know I like fun trims. For her armband, I 3D printed the medallion thing, her little medallion that has an N on it. I sanded it starting with some 150 grit sandpaper. I covered it with resin to smooth it out, and then I sprayed it with filler primer until it was smooth. After that, I hand painted it gold and I weathered it with some dark brown paint. Finally, I got to use my favorite fabric, which is the purple cayman fabric, which I only used 2 small strips of, but it was an amazing experience. It sewed very nicely. Again, make sure you use a leather needle. I sewed some strips of elastic to the armbands to close them off, and this is so it slips on and off my arm easily. So hot glue won't work on this fabric, and y'all know I love using hot glue. So I also needed to attach the medallion. So I sewed a strip of cotton fabric to the armband, which hot glue sticks very well to, and then I hot glued it on. Nothing will ever stop me from using hot glue Don't come for me. I love hot glue. I also hot glued the leather trim on. Again, don't come for me. Next is the hat, which I got for like $12 off of Amazon. It's just a simple white felt hat. She has the gold binding that spirals around the hat, so I actually used that same trim that I used on the belt on the hat. So what I did was I cut out a hole every inch, and then I slipped the gold trim through the holes, and then I just spiraled it around. I got these really cool celestial nail charms, and I used gem tack to attach them. I just thought it was a cute, fun accent. If you look at her live action hat, I think specifically the purple one has these like stars that they embossed into it. So that's kind of what I was referencing there. I just thought it was cute. And that's pretty much it. I did, you know, fun makeup. I got a black bob wig. All I did on her wig was trim the bangs, and that was pretty much it. But yeah, that is everything. That is how I made this costume. It was really fun. I appreciate BigZ Fabrics so much for sending me all of the fabric I needed to create this project. I wouldn't recommend a product that I wasn't, you know, that I didn't buy on my own for years. I have been a customer of BigZ for quite a long time. Their website's really easy to use. And like I said, if you make fursuits or if you need anything with fur, definitely check out their fur. I hope you guys like this video. I have more One Piece cosplays coming up soon. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out and watching. If you like fun, crafty stuff, if you're a cosplayer, then feel free to subscribe and hang out. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks again for watching. Have a super awesome rest of the day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye. I'm tickling my pockets.
I see that. Wow.